So this is the creation of the front and back cover of my magazine. So I chose this image because it had plenty of room on the top right for me to put the title of my magazine, and I just felt like it reflected the project nicely. It was just really casual and sweet looking. So I decided to use these rose graphics at the top again to bring in the nature theme that I've been trying to pull through the whole project, and decided to recolour them into rainbow colours because rainbows symbolise hope and peace, and that is another theme that I wanted to bring through my project, as it's all about acceptance of different insecurities. So I recoloured just a simple rose graphic using Photoshop and clipping layers into rose colours, and I'm just making them into a little border because my focus groups that I did on my wireframe suggested creating a little border on the edge of the photo. So I'm just aligning that nicely now. I'm having it overlap with the background rather than just being on the white part of the cover, just to add a little bit more depth and meld the background and foreground a little bit more naturally. And I'm just trying to sort of make them look like they're coming from behind the image and kind of sitting on the edge, which is why I'm adjusting the leaves to the different positions that they're in. So this was just a few minutes of trial and error of adding different flowers and moving layers around until I was happy with the placement. I also wanted to include the rainbow because bright colours are another theme that runs through the whole of my project, because I wanted a very joyful, almost childlike, kind of very youthful look to it. Because the project is, the prompt word that I chose for this project was love, I wanted it to be very happy and bright, and kind of reflect the self-love that I wanted to focus on. So I'm trying to adjust the flowers here so that the leaves would be symmetrical in some way, but I think in a minute you'll see I didn't like how that looked because I couldn't get it all to sit right. So I think here I'm just looking at that, deciding if I like it, zooming out and getting the full picture, and I think now I'm just going in and adjusting the leaves so that they sit a little bit more naturally, but I am just duplicating all of those layers and moving them as one down to the bottom rather than having to do all of that again because it's a bit tedious. So I'm just zooming out there and looking at it for a minute just to decide if I actually like how that looks, and choosing a colour for the background there. I wanted it to be off-white rather than bright white, because just plain white can look very clinical, it looks very harsh, it's not very nice to look at, so I decided to use just a nice warm off-white just to make it look a little bit friendlier. So I'm adding the title of the magazine here, which I used a typewriter font and stylised lower caps for, to make it look very casual and accessible, and again just use that off-white colour. And then to reflect the rainbows that I used for the flowers and just bringing that theme a little bit more, I'm adding a rainbow drop shadow to really draw attention to that text and make it look like the logo of this magazine. So this took a while because it was just lots of duplicating layers, but I picked the colours from the flowers so it's all nice and consistent, and this just brings in that colour scheme a little bit more and makes it look more cohesive. I chose to place that in the top right of the image because that is naturally where the eye is drawn to in an image, and I wanted that to kind of be your first point of focus on the image, and then you sort of naturally, your gaze flows around the rest of it. So I put a little subtitle there that's kind of just summarising the project and what it's about. I think I changed that a couple of times because I didn't like the wording of it. And then just down at the bottom here, I am crediting myself with the design and creation and everything. again using that off-white font and the typewriter font. I also like the slightly sort of vintage retro look that the typewriter font creates. I like bringing that as a thread through all of my projects, so I wanted this to be consistent to other things that I've created as well. And just adding a little drop shadow there to make it more easily readable on the background that it's on, because there are multiple colours on the background. Just making sure it's nice and easily accessible and readable, and adding a drop shadow to that little subtitle as well. And I think there I'm realising you can't see it very well. But for now I was done with the front cover, so now I'm just moving on to, I'm referencing my wireframe there, moving on to crediting everything, the software and where I source my graphics from, at the bottom of the back cover in a little paragraph, just to make it look nice and professional and show how it was created, again using that same typewriter font and just putting that in small text at the very bottom. And there I am crediting each model that was featured in the project, with their names in order, and then I will be adding their photos just above in the same order that I'm stating there. So I decided to make that bold, just to draw attention to it a little bit more. Adding a little thank you note to the shooting location that I did it at, and to some other people that volunteered for the project but unfortunately had to cancel or weren't included due to time constraints, because they still helped it happen the way that it did. So now I'm just picking my credit photos for each of the models, which I wanted to show their faces nice and clearly, and ideally, if I could, show them holding their sign. Not all of them do, because some people I didn't have a photo that sort of matched the tone where they were holding their sign, but I just wanted each person's face to be shown nice and clearly. So I'm just aligning the sizes to make sure they all fit properly, and this was a little bit of trial and error to get everything to actually align and fit properly on the back page. Just resizing things and seeing what looked good. I wanted to try this kind of offset look to see if that worked, but I think I will see in a minute if I remember rightly that I didn't like that very much, and decided to just align them all straight, because it just created a nicer flow. But I'm just loading in more of the images there. I wanted to include images where each of the models was smiling and they had a very natural kind of expression, because again the candid aspect of the photography featured in this project is a big part of it, and I wanted to show the sort of message and values of the project immediately on the cover, to really grab the viewer's attention or the reader's attention and make sure they know exactly kind of what the project is about right from that first look at the cover. So I'm still just adding in all of my images there. There were 6 people to add in here, and then just adjusting all of them to fit properly. So I liked the way that was laid out, but I just needed to adjust the height of everything. So I aligned it with the top of the image on the front cover first, and then just moved everything upwards a little bit more. Again, because the eye is naturally drawn more towards the upper thirds of an image, and then just adjusting that credit text a little bit more so it takes up more space and is more easily readable, and just moving it around a little bit just to make everything look more cohesive, a little bit more professional. So I think I'm just checking it all over there, making sure that I'm happy with the way that it looks, and making sure I zoom out often, so I don't get stuck looking at just one little aspect of it and don't have the context of the rest of it to see if it all matches nicely. So I think I'm just organising, I'm organising all of my layers there because I had quite a lot on this cover, just to make my job a little bit easier and get some of them out of the way so I don't accidentally click things that I don't need to just when I'm completing the rest of this project. So I tried adding the rainbow drop shadow to this text again, just to bring in that theme from the front cover, but because the text was black here and it was cream on the front cover, the black text made it look a lot heavier and a lot darker than I wanted it to. It didn't look very pastel, it looked really dark and heavy and way too bold. So I think I tried it again with slightly different colour and still didn't like it very much. So I was just organising all of my layers there again. I think I decided to keep that purple drop shadow for a little bit while I moved on to the flowers. So I decided to do these flowers. I recoloured it like I had with the rest of the flowers on the other layouts, but I decided to try recolouring it in the cream of the front cover first, just so it didn't take away too much from the rest of the design and was just a nice kind of subtle nod to the rest of it. But I think we'll see in a minute, I didn't like how this turned out, and I also added it in a slightly more irregular way than I ended up going for in the end. But again, this was just more trial and error. So there's me recolouring it to have a green flower, because I had flowers recoloured in almost every colour of the rainbow from all of my other layouts except green. So I just needed to do the green one there. And there I am importing all of the flower colours instead of just having one recoloured as cream to use. So this was just more experimenting with placement and seeing what looked the most natural and the most cohesive, because again I wanted to create a nice visual flow and visually interesting depth and just meld everything together really nicely and smoothly. So I'm just adjusting everything to make sure it fits nicely and trying out different placements of the flowers. This took a little bit of time and trial and error to get right because there were several placements of the flowers that I didn't really like very much. So that just took a little bit of time and trial and error, and I kept zooming out and looking at the whole thing just to check how it was looking and just get a little bit of perspective on it, because that tends to happen quite a lot when you're creating a piece of art, is if you focus too much on one aspect of it, you lose focus on the rest. So I wanted to make sure that I was continually checking and reevaluating what I'd done. So I think here I decided to put the flowers in the exact same place for all of them, have them all the same size, and just have them decorate in the upper left corner of each person's photo. This was just for consistency because I couldn't figure out a way to have them sort of randomly scattered around that looked natural. So I just decided to go for consistency that looks better rather than having it be random and not look very good. So I'm just rotating everything to the right angle there, and I like that much better because everyone has their own little sprig of flowers. So I decided to change the credit text there. Instead of having it be black, I wanted to make it cream and then experiment with drop shadows to create sort of borders, using other layers of text to make it readable. I felt like the other text was a little bit too heavy with having it be black, and there was no other black text on this, so I didn't feel like it matched very well with anything. So there I am, just trying to create a little shadow there. I decided to make it black instead of a colour, just to sort of make it look like relief, like it's standing out from the page a little bit. And I like that a lot better because it looked like more of a border. It was softer, matched with the rest of the layout a lot better, but was still readable. But I found it was a little bit difficult to read everything there, so I decided to darken the cream text layer there and up the saturation a little bit, so it was a little bit more yellow or brown. I think I was going for more of a brown because that looked more neutral. So it was just a little bit of trial and error in finding a decent shade of brown to use for that, which I tried to use the colour picker features to do, but that didn't work out perfectly. But I gave it a try just to see if I could get the effect that I wanted. So in the end I decided to use the swatches of brown that are natively in Photoshop rather than just adjusting the background colour, because it was such a pale shade of cream anyway. It just sort of ended up more yellow and muddy coloured than an actual rich brown colour. So I just picked a brown and then tried to adjust it a little bit just to make it fit nicely. Tried changing these bits of text that are my credit and the little summary subtitle to that, but I didn't like it. So I decided to keep them just as the cream shade and adjust that shade of brown a little bit more, again referencing my wireframe and checking everything, and that was the layout that I ended up going for. So I think I changed a couple of other small aspects. I think I adjusted the brown of the credit text to be a little bit cooler toned, just because I felt like the warm tone wasn't neutral enough for the rest of the layout, and I didn't want to draw attention to that rather than the images. But that was the cover, the front and back cover that I went with.